What's the worst game you've ever played? It's a complicated question because worst is a broad term. Does it have the worst gameplay? The worst story? Is it actually a fine game, but it's made worse by external factors like its failure to meet the standards of its predecessor? It's a complicated question, and yet the answer is always so simple. Picking favourites is hard, love is easy to give out. But hate? Hate is focused. Hate stays with you long after it runs cold. That's why for almost 10 years now I've had an easy answer. Trials of the Blood Dragon. You're probably going to need some context. Context 1. In 2011, Ubisoft acquired Redling Studios, a studio most famous for making a series of games called Trials, which are physics-driven 2D platformers on a motorbike. They're pretty good. They have a surprising amount of mechanical depth for what seems on the surface to be quite a simple premise. It's one of those franchises where casuals like me can enjoy the game just fine, but people who are really good at the game are basically playing a different game entirely. They don't really have a plot, and what plot they do have is usually a lot of lol, so random type stuff. They're a big fan of squirrels. Context 2. In 2013, Ubisoft released Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, a standalone expansion to the open-world FPS game Far Cry 3, which recontextualizes the whole game as an 80s retro future pastiche with laser guns and cyber dinosaurs. It was pretty good, with the instantly classic tagline, "The year is 2007. It is the future," so you know immediately what you're getting into. They got Michael Biehn to phone in a performance, they got Power Glove to do a pretty kick-ass soundtrack, and they already had the solid mechanical foundations of Far Cry 3. It was an easy sell. It was short, sweet, and a surprise novelty hit for Ubisoft, who only really put it together to interest new people in the franchise before Far Cry 4 the next year. Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon has two legacies. One is that it established the pattern of every Far Cry game having some sort of weird genre hybrid spin-off, which I love, by the way. I wish more franchises would do this. And the second is the Blood Dragon IP. Blood Dragon has nothing to do with Far Cry 3. It has different characters and it's a different universe. The only reason it's called Far Cry is the shared mechanics. But it's now got some goodwill, so what's a gaming megacorporation to do with it? Hey, those bike guys aren't doing anything right now. Why don't we give it to them? You know, let's take this delicious cake and mix it together with this spaghetti dinner. What could go wrong? Oh, everything? Well, shit. Alright, during Ubisoft's 2016 E3 presentation, these two boys came on stage and announced their new collaborative project. These two boys being the director of Redlings and the director of Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. And their new project was Trials of the Blood Dragon, which was available that very day. Shadow drops are always good PR, right? Well, not if the game's bad. Okay, to be fair, Trials of the Blood Dragon is not holistically bad. The parts of the game that are a Trials game are fine. Mechanically, Trials of the Blood Dragon is to Trials Fusion what the original was to Far Cry 3. Mostly. The parts where you're on a bike doing bike stuff feel exactly like Trials Fusion, which is solid. It's just everything else that's tacked around that core that drags it all down. The game inherits the same visual style as Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, which sometimes looks okay, but mostly just looks weirdly cheap in the kind of janky art style of the Trials games. And that's not really an insult. The Trials games have a look. They play within the visual constraints of every level being a linear bike path as best they can, but it's not a style that lends itself well to storytelling. Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon also used a bunch of VHS effects and filters to give the game its look, which are imported over here, but they get old real fast. There are some moments that look good, but for the most part this is an ugly game. YouTube compression is going to murder it even more, but trust me, it always looks weird. The bigger problem is the baffling decision to spend a huge portion of the game off the bike. For the first time in any Trials games, there are platformer segments sprinkled through most of the levels, and they are just awful. Tight controls is one of the most important features of the Trials games, and these segments abandon all of it. They're floaty and weird and feel extremely unpolished. They don't feel fair. That's the thing about even the hardest levels of Trials, is that the burden is always on you. You can do it if you just learn what you're supposed to do. These segments, especially when you get to the boss fights where it tries to be Cuphead for a little while, feel unfair. There is absolutely an element of luck that's not supposed to be a part of the Trials experience. Much like the regular games, you die from one mistake. However, normally the games aren't firing machine guns at you. But don't worry, it gets worse. Even on the bike levels, they often give you a grappling hook, which is sometimes fun, but not nearly refined enough to be reliable or predictable. And then there's the jetpack levels. I'm not sure I can describe how awful the controls feel on this thing, but you can see it on screen right now. It's a constant battle against the controls to even get yourself aimed in the direction you want to go. Combine this with instant kill spinning death blades and you've got yourself a one-way trip to Miseryland. The absolute worst level in the whole game, though, is 17, Extermination. This mission has you carrying a big bomb to blow up a giant alien bug queen. The bomb is not secured in the trailer and the slightest bump will set it off. There are a lot of slight bumps, but it gets worse because halfway through the level you're thrown off the bike and have to carry the bomb the rest of the way on the jetpack. The bomb constantly weighs you down, meaning you can barely move at all, and it will still blow up if it hits anything, even as it's swinging around the place just because you dared to move 3 feet. It's one of the most miserable gaming experiences I've ever had in my life. And the thought of replaying it over and over again to try and get an A+ rank on this level, which means 0 faults, sends a shiver down my spine. Because there's nothing to learn here, the ball is way too unpredictable for that. An A+ run is at max like 30% skill and 70% luck. It spits in the face of the very design that makes the Trials games good in the first place. The games heavily encourage that one more try impulse, because it's about iteration and perfection. Shave off a few seconds on this jump, time that bounce a little better. All these small changes you can make that feel tangible and calculated. There's no calculations to make here. This ball is here to screw up your day, and it will do so regardless of what you try. And I know there's some guy out there who's like, oh, it's not that hard if you just get good. Listen, not everyone is a bloody savant with a controller, okay? Tell the 99.96% of players who don't have this achievement that it's not that hard. Please. Also, have a little more respect for your abilities, accept it, own it. You don't have to be humble, not everyone is as good as you. Anyway, all of this is enough to make it a bad game, or at least a bad Trials game, but the worst game I've ever played? Surely I've played worse games than this, and technically I have. I've played games that are more broken. I've played games that look worse. I've played games that are not even games. No. What makes something the worst isn't just something that sucks to play, but something that sucks to think about. Something that feels like a personal attack. Even with all that context I started with, I've still not given you enough context to truly understand this game. Because Trials of the Blood Dragon is not just set in the same universe as Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, it's a direct sequel to Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. The hero of Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon is Rex Power Colt, Mark IV Cyber Commando, voiced by Michael Biehn. The whole character is a parody. Biehn voices the whole thing with the bored, disaffected attitude of a B-list action star in a shitty D-list straight-to-home video movie. It's funny, the whole thing is a parody of all the things people thought were cool in the 80s, mixed with some commentary on Reagan-era American imperialism. The Americans nuked Canada and annexed Australia, but the villain of the piece doesn't think they've done enough to secure freedom. The whole game is really an exercise in doing less with more. They didn't have the time or budget for proper cutscenes, so instead all of the cutscenes are done in this retro art style that's honestly way more charming and timeless than a normal in-game cutscene would have been anyway. If you take off the filters, then the game would just look like Far Cry 3. But those filters add so much and give the game a completely distinct vibe and atmosphere. The game walks a very tight line between homage and parody. It takes a very mocking tone towards the old 80s B-movies, but it feels in good spirits, by people who clearly love the genre a lot and know all the tropes they're parodying. Like the female lead, Darling, Dr. Elizabeth Veronica Darling, the super smart nuclear scientist who falls in love with Rex's big cyborg muscles and true American heroism.
Be careful, Rex. That place is filled with death.
What kind of death?
The dangerous kind, Rex.
Trials of the Blood Dragon trips right over that line, to the point where it's impossible to discern what the game's even going for. It's been 12 years. Rex and Darling got married and had 2 kids, Roxanne and Slater. Michael Biehn is back, by the way, they got him in for this. One night, Darling disappeared, and then later on, Rex died in the war, leaving his 2 kids in the care of an army general named Ryback, who turned these kids into cyber commandos like dear old dad. Yes, this is supposed to be a 12-year-old. Instead of the cutscenes being done in 80s arcade-style low-res art, they're all done in this very cartoony style that's supposed to be evocative of 90s morning cartoons. They figure that since it's 12 years later and about the kids, they should draw 90s tropes instead of 80s. But this is where they stumble right out of the gate, because it doesn't look like a 90s cartoon, it looks like a mid-2000s Flash animation. That's a look, but it's the wrong look. It's not the vibe the game is trying to capture. Not to mention the game still uses all the 80s visuals and VHS screen tearing when you're actually in the game, and they got Power Glove back for the soundtrack, so it's all 80s synthwave. The 90s influences are relegated to the cutscenes and some of the story beats. The game doesn't seem to know the difference between parody and pastiche. Take, for example, Chapter 5, Bomb the Bugs, the one with the awful bomb level. This whole chapter is an homage to Starship Troopers. But why? Starship Troopers is already satire. You can't parody it by making it even more satirical. Like the Viet Cong have been breeding with the alien bugs to create super soldiers. What's the joke, exactly? Is it a parody? A parody of what? Is it just supposed to be random and funny? Because it's not really delivered that way. Also, the Vietnam War is a 60s, early 70s thing. If we're doing 90s, then shouldn't we have moved on to the Soviets by now? One of the only jokes in the game that does work is in this chapter, which is that the bugs are nicknamed Communist Insectoid Aliens, or CIA for short, so we have to blow up the CIA. That's kind of funny, but that also infers a level of satire that's not present for the rest of the game. How about the chapter to find the Holy Grail? The whole thing is full of Indiana Jones references. The chapter is called Raiders of the Lost Grail, and Roxanne is wearing some 90s Lara Croft sunglasses for this chapter. But what's the joke? Is the joke that we're doing Indiana Jones? Is it reference humour? It's certainly not parody, or if it is, it's missing the part of a parody where you poke fun at the original. It just is. Then there's the part where Roxanne goes to Mars and ends up in hell. Like, Doom? Joke? Parody? Satire? Extremely earnest homage? I have no idea. There's a side mission in Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon that's a reference to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where you have to go down into a sewer and assassinate the titular turtles. The joke being that when you reach them, they're just regular turtles that have somehow set up a bunch of deadly traps for you. It's absurd. It's silly. It's a joke. Trials of the Blood Dragon has a whole chapter referencing Power Rangers. Except the joke here is that they're not only a TV show, they're also real ninjas doing assassinations for the communists under the guise of being a TV show. And then you kill them all after evading their elaborate death traps. One of these jokes is absurdist and light and worth a smirk or two, and one is, what if Power Rangers? But bad. A premise which I guarantee every single one of Power Rangers has done at least once. There's a critical sword of Damocles hanging over my head right now. It's bad on purpose. That's the joke. Okay, look, bad and janky on purpose is absolutely a part of the Trials game. They have a lot of fun with janky ragdoll physics and the inherent absurdity of their entire premise. But that's because there's nothing in the Trials games to take seriously. They have no plot. They're primarily mechanical experiences and everything else is secondary. Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon is likewise bad on purpose. The dialogue is cheesy, the delivery is stilted and weird, because it's an homage to that very particular 80s style, and it works for what it's going for. So yes, there's absolutely parts of Trials of the Blood Dragon that are bad on purpose, like the 12-year-olds looking like adults. That's probably not a mistake. It's like a movie where they cast obvious adult stunt doubles for children. It might be a funnier joke if they drew attention to it, but whatever. But then, take for example, the bad voice acting. The voice acting in the game is bad. It's really bad.
Play? It's Rox.
Hey Rox, where you been? Your signal was cut out during that mission on Mars. Things seemed a little intense. You okay?
Well, I got sucked into a transdimensional portal and ended up in hell. Besides that, I'm just swell.
It's bad. Is it on purpose? Probably. But for bad on purpose to be good, it actually has to have a purpose. I don't want to blow your mind or anything, but 90s cartoons are good. I'm not a 90s kid, but it's just kind of well established culturally that the 90s are when cartoons started to get really good. Batman the Animated Series, Dexter's Laboratory, Rocko's Modern Life. There's a ton of 90s cartoons that are well remembered and beloved. It's 80s cartoons that have the reputation for being cheap and having bad voice acting, like He-Man or G.I. Joe. That's part of their charm. Not the 90s. 90s cartoons are remembered for being good. Or how about the ending? About halfway through the game, you discover that Rex Powercole is not dead, he's just been brainwashed and turned evil by the Viet Cong. So you do a bunch of random nonsense to unbrainwash him, and happy ending. But then a twist. General Ryback was actually Dr. Darling all along. Also, Dr. Darling is not a human, she's a blood dragon in human form, who's been manipulating the events this whole time so that her species could start a full invasion of the planet. Is this a joke? Is it a parody of bad cartoon twists? Are we doing Scooby-Doo? Or am I actually supposed to take this seriously? Am I supposed to be genuinely invested in these characters in this world and this is a grimdark bad ending? I don't know. Ryback being Darling makes no sense at all. It simply must be a bad twist on purpose. But then the Blood Dragon invasion twist kind of does make sense within the batshit plot of the game. So what? What is this? What am I supposed to feel? The game both expects you to care a great deal about the original Blood Dragon while at the same time getting obvious stuff completely wrong. Like, for example, the Blood Dragons. In Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, the Blood Dragons are big four-legged dinosaurs with laser eyes. They're an important mechanical feature of the game because they're generally too tough to take out on your own, but you can lure them into outposts to create havoc and usually take out most of the guards before luring them out of the base again. It would be impossible for anyone who's played the original not to be familiar with them. In Trials of the Blood Dragon, Blood Dragons are sentient bipedal kaijus with little shop of horror mouths. This is not explained. It's treated as if this is what they've always been. So does the game care about the lore, or not? Is the fact that it doesn't care about the lore a joke? I don't know, and it frustrates me to think about, and all I know is that I hate it. It's very hard to find anything concrete on this game's production. Because it was a shadow drop, there's no interviews, there's no press. The Wikipedia page for this game is a void. I've only managed to find one piece of behind-the-scenes material for this game, and the passion on display, well, it's inspiring.
A lot of us at the studio are big fans of Far Cry Blood Dragon, and when we approached the creative director, Dean Evans, about it, he basically didn't take any convincing at all to get things going, and that's what happened.
Okay, thanks. Great story, Pro. In the absence of any other explanation or any evidence of true creative passion, the only explanation I'm left with is corporate trash. People like this brand, and they like this brand, and if we smash them together, that's just good synergy. It's a game that doesn't seem to have any understanding of what people liked about either of its predecessors. It's a direct sequel in an entirely different genre from the previous game. A genre that's much more niche than FPS, by the way. Nobody at any point in this game's short production cycle seems to have had the thought that maybe this isn't a game that anybody wants. Switch it up. Would anyone want Trials of the Far Cry, Trials of the Watch Dogs, Trials of the Assassin's Creed? Some things just don't go together. Not everything needs to be a mashup. And that's why it's the worst game I've ever played. Right? I mean, the soundtrack is pretty good. I like Power Glove. And, you know, I guess I appreciate the way that all the different chapters have a unique look. The game is ugly, but they tried their best. I like the big tank thing. It's not hard, but it's a fun change of pace. Okay. Here's the thing about holding a grudge for 8 years. It's actually quite hard, because hatred does actually fade. Sometimes it takes a while, but it always does. And for hatred of a game, oftentimes the thing that breaks it is just playing it again. Is this game totally worthless? I don't really think so. I mean, it's weird, it makes a lot of interesting choices and takes a lot of risks. They don't pay off, it's a bad game, but is it irredeemably terrible? Not really. Can I imagine a person who would enjoy it? Yes, quite easily. See, what you couldn't possibly know is that I've made this video before. My friends at the SE Library are hosting a Remake Jam this month, and I decided I would revamp this old video about Trials of the Blood Dragon that I made 8 years ago. Right now that video has 17 views and 2 likes, and I unlisted it a few years ago along with a bunch of other old videos because they're bad. I was using Windows Movie Maker. I didn't know how to balance background music at all, and most importantly I thought that hyper-negativity was funny, as was the style of the time. But 8 years is a long time. A scary amount of time, really. And I'm not that person anymore. I have a totally different outlook on what being a critic means. I don't actually hate Trials of the Blood Dragon, it's too interesting to hate. Being uniquely bad is way more interesting than being generically average. I guarantee you I could load up the store right now and find you a game that's obviously worse than Trials of the Blood Dragon. Because the actual worst games are shovelware crap like Zumba, Galactic, Marble Blast. A rip-off of Zumba full of AI art that was probably scrapped together in a week and shoved onto the storefront to con people. That's the real answer, but the real answer is boring. Because the worst game you've ever played is not actually the worst game you've ever played. The worst game you've ever played is a story. The worst game you've ever played is a conversation. The worst game you've ever played defines you just as much as the best game you've ever played, and you've got to make sure that it's an interesting one. So, thank you, Trials of the Blood Dragon, for being a good answer. I don't like you, I don't appreciate you, you probably shouldn't exist, but thank you for being my line in the sand, where a bad game is worthy enough to be the worst game. Now, tell me again, what's the worst game you've ever played? Thank you for watching, and a very special thank you to my wonderful patrons for your continued support. If you'd like to see your name up here, or just support the things that I do, then please consider signing up, it would mean a lot to me. As well as a like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. And also, thank you to the SE Library, although basically specifically Sam Afterthoughts for organising this. It was a lot of fun, thank you. I believe this video will be part of a playlist, so if and when that exists, you can find that playlist up here. Or, if you really want, here's the original video. It's bad. Don't say I didn't warn you.